You keep trying to change the subject from the real political issue to a contrived political issue because you know that the real political issue, as it's being fought, the Democrat position is completely indefensible and abhorrent to anyone who has even a modicum of a conscience.
I don't even want to have a view on this. Like,
exactly.
I don't want to have anything to do with it. Like, I want this
slavery doesn't concern me.
I don't think he's paid for any abortions because he doesn't pay his contractors or subcontractors.
But believe it or not, Ryan, you've done very evil things too.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we are going to be watching Michael Knowles violently dismantle a liberal. Now, guys, this one is not for the faint-hearted because it becomes a crime scene very quickly. I would say that this has to be one of the best takedowns of the entire year.
Son of a bitch! Eric!
So you guys are going to enjoy this one. Let's get into it.
And Democrats would say that the reason that they're competitive, or the reason that why they might even have a slight advantage at this point, is Trump's success in overturning Roe v. Wade, and that the country has kind of recoiled at that. What's your assessment of that? And tell me, like, for people who our ecosystems don't overlap enough, so a lot of our viewers might not know, what exactly your politics are, where you are on this side. My understanding is you're like pretty hardcore on the life side.
I prepped it, Michael.
Like down the line. She prepped me a little bit. Like you're like down the line, like as out there as you can get on it, right?
Yeah, I think we ought to protect babies. I think it's bad to kill babies. It's basically I guess that's an extreme position now. I used to be kind of a moderate and common sense position.
Protecting babies too. You want to elaborate on that?
We agree.
Yeah.
I don't think we really need to elaborate. I think it's bad to kill babies. So that would inform my election choices. I agree with you that Roe v. Wade's overruling is an issue in the campaign. I think it's really the only issue that helps Democrats at all, and then only in certain places. But conservatives have debated how to react to this. You've seen a lot of Republicans just basically trying to downplay the issue on the campaign trail, which is probably fine as a matter of prudence. I think what happened with Roe v. Wade being overruled is not that pro-lifers merely won a victory. It's not that Democrats won a political victory, as some of them claim. It's that the whole conversation changed. So now the Supreme Court says in the Dobbs ruling that the issue has to go back to the states. The Supreme Court could have said that the 14th Amendment provides equal protection, and so you can't kill babies anywhere. That's certainly an argument. Professor Robbie George, John Finnis made that argument in an amicus brief to the court. But that's not what they said. They said the issue goes back to the states and people can vote on it. And so the issue for pro-lifers is that when abortion has come up as a ballot initiative, the pro-abortion policies have succeeded. They've prevailed pretty much every time. So Republicans are in a bad position right now because we're in a whole new ballgame. And so what is required is to win hearts and minds and persuade people that it's wrong to kill babies and it's good to protect life at the state level. But that's not really a federal matter right now. The Supreme Court has ruled on it. So when Trump and J.D. Vance downplay the issue of abortion, I think they're doing so as a matter of political prudence, but it's also just common sense. They really have nothing to do with that issue right now. Unless the Supreme Court is going to reverse its position, which it's not, then that's really a matter for the states, and it's a matter for gubernatorial candidates and state legislature candidates to fight.
And not to debate the point, but just on the definition of babies again, do you think that an IUD kills babies?
Well, an IUD is a contraceptive device, right? So in principle, I'm not not the biggest expert in contraception. I have 3 kids under 4, but from what I understand, that would prevent the conception of a baby. So
it in general prevents the implantation.
Oh, well, inasmuch, I suppose this would be similar to certain abortifacient drugs where the
Plan B.
The nature of it, like Plan B, is debated. And some people, you're being, I suppose, a little bit more blunt about it than many pro-sexual revolution types on the left. But many people argue that things like Plan B or things like IUDs are merely contraceptive and not abortifacient. But if they are contraceptive, then they prevent contraception. If they're abortifacient, they obviously involve abortions.
Yeah, it's just a matter of basic fact that sometimes they prevent implantation.
Right.
So you would consider that a baby. So you would say IUDs, if that's the case, if I'm right about that you think that IUDs, a woman with an IUD is like killing babies. I guess the question you're asking me, is when do I think human life begins? Mm-hmm.
And so my answer is, I think it begins at the beginning. I don't know when else you would say it begins. Now, of course, no one's really campaigning in this election.
Where's
they're not even really campaigning on abortion, but no one's really campaigning against IUDs or any contraception or anything like that. We're pointing out that the Democrats have taken their safe, legal, rare position. Well, the reason is because the Democrats.
You just said you're voting on
kill.
You don't want to kill babies.
If you like, Ryan.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So the reason that they're not campaigning on that is because the Democrats have moved the goalposts so far. They used to campaign on safe, legal, and rare. Now they campaign on abortion at any moment up till birth and including after birth. So I know the Democrats are trying to run away with this because it's unpopular, but Andrew Cuomo, when he was governor of New York, was one of the first Democrat governors to change the law to say there will be no restrictions on abortion, even change the penal code such that if you killed a woman who was pregnant, it would no longer be double homicide. It would only be a single homicide. And then he lit up the Freedom Tower pink to celebrate. Tim Walz, as governor of Minnesota, repealed legal protections for babies who are born alive, who survive abortions. Babies can survive outside of the womb now as early as 24 weeks, 23 weeks, 22 weeks, even 21 weeks. So it's very, very young. Abortions take place up until the moment of birth. And so previously in Minnesota, there was a law that required doctors to provide medical care to babies who survive abortions, just as you would provide medical care to anybody who needed it. Tim Walz removed those protections. Tim Walz then also removed the reporting requirements. Now, we know the number is disputed, but we know somewhere at least 5, maybe 8, maybe more babies actually were born alive, and they were callously left to die without any medical care. So that's where we're fighting the issue right now, because it clarifies the issue so much, and it's where Democrats have brought the issue. It's not Republicans who have done that.
So this one is about to get good, and this man is about to get violated by Michael Knowles. But just quickly on this. This conversation is absolutely astounding if you just take a step back and look at what's actually being said here. And it's indicative of how desensitized we have become toward the issue of abortion in society. The fact that this guy is sitting there smugly saying, oh, well, you're totally out there on the issue of life.
You're like pretty hardcore on the life side, as out there as you can get on it, right?
Out there? It's an out there view to want to protect innocent children from being slaughtered. I mean, he calls Michael hardcore, but he's not hardcore in the way that he's saying it. Michael is hardcore philosophically and morally consistent. I mean, it is a fact that life begins at conception, and any biologist worth their salt would tell you that. So if you believe that it is wrong to take an innocent human life, then the only position is that it's wrong in all cases to perform an abortion, unless in the case that the mother is certain to die along with the baby. That's the only case that I can think of. And that happens very, very rarely. But that's only the bottom layer. And then you get into the very common liberal arguments where they say, well, she couldn't afford to have a baby, or she wasn't planning on it, or she just woke up one morning during the pregnancy and decided that she didn't want the kid anymore.
Have you ever had an abortion?
Yes.
Yes. I have had an abortion. I didn't feel like I was ready to bring something or someone into this world.
Those arguments are absurd and completely indefensible. And make no mistake, in the broader cultural discussion and political discussion, the argument is not about IUDs. There's a much, much more serious fight being had here, and that is with very prominent Democrat politicians, for example, who will openly advocate for and sign bills so that babies who survive abortions won't receive medical help and will be left to die. And also, they don't want any restrictions on abortions. They literally want to be able to do it up until birth. And don't take it from me, take it from them.
How late in the third trimester could a physician perform an abortion if he indicated it would impair the mental health of the woman?
Or physical health.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm talking about the mental health.
So, I mean, through the third trimester. The third trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks.
Okay, but to the end of the third trimester.
Yep, I don't think we have a limit in the bill.
So, where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth, she has physical signs of that she is about to give a birth, would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified? She's dilating.
Mr. Chairman, that would be a decision that the doctor, the physician, and the woman would make.
I understand that. I'm asking if your bill allows that.
My bill would allow that, yes.
Do you support any restrictions on abortion?
I don't. I've always believed...
Even in the third trimester?
Do you think there should be any limitation on abortions?
No, I do not.
till now, my understanding is there wasn't a limit on when in a pregnancy a woman could receive an abortion. Have you set any limit on
There are no limits. Is there a cutoff for you before that point?
No, to me, it's a reproductive, it's a healthcare decision. It's up to women to make that decision.
Where it's obvious that a woman is about to give birth, she has physical signs that she is about to give a birth. Would that still be a point at which she could request an abortion if she was so certified?
My bill would allow that, yes.
Virginia's governor says he has no regrets on his comments earlier this week defending abortion, even as a baby is being born.
If a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
Are you for what he said, or late-term abortion, or the moments that he was talking about where you would keep a woman comfortable after she was giving birth in case she wanted to abort her third-term child?
I don't know all his comments, but what I do know is that I am for women having the right to make a choice about her own body.
State lawmakers in New York approved a law permitting abortion in the state up until birth. Cuomo applauded the legislation and marked the occasion by lighting the spire of the One World Trade Center pink to celebrate.
8 months into pregnancy, should a woman be allowed legally to have an abortion?
Again, I've told you I believe women's right to choose, period.
At the Capitol today, a House committee approved a bill that would remove restrictions on abortions performed in Minnesota.
The bill would erase the requirements such as parental notification, or that clinics can only handle first trimester abortions, that patients be told about possible links to cancer, and the 24-hour waiting period. The bill would repeal a law that requires doctors to save any baby born alive during an abortion.
Those in favor of Prop 1 include Governor Newsom, the California Democratic Party, and abortion rights groups such as the Planned Parenthood affiliates of California.
With regard to abortion, do you believe that a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy up until the moment of birth?
Look, I think that happens very, very rarely, and I think this is being made into a political issue. Okay? So I think it's rare, it's being made into a political issue, but at the end of the day, I believe that the decision over abortion belongs to a woman and a physician, not the federal government, not the state government, and not the local government.
So that's the sort of monstrosity that we're up against. And if you'd like to see what an abortion looks like after about 13 weeks, then go to my X page where I posted a video of that today. The video has a doctor explaining exactly how this procedure takes place. Moving on now.
Well, Ryan, I saw your reaction to the after birth thing. Did you want to follow up on? I mean, Michael explained what happened in Minnesota, for example, which is it's a matter of not providing care, legalizing the declining to provide care. Is that not? I mean, that is a real thing that both Cuomo, it was something that Ralph Northam advocated for.
I guess why don't we leave this to doctors? Who am I to
because we're
I
citizens
didn't go
of
to
a
medical
self-governing
school.
republic, and we have
What's
laws against murder. It's so amazing that the Democrats, who have been campaigning for socialized medicine for decades now, say on this one healthcare issue, we just need to get the government out of it. What are you talking about? We're citizens. We live in a self-governing republic. We have something to say about the laws. That's why we're all talking about an election here, and we're talking about a matter of life and death. Even if you take the babies out of it, for some reason you don't like the babies. Yeah. But let's say you're just talking about, I don't know, a disabled woman or something, just an adult who is in the room who requires desperate medical care in an emergency room. Would you say that doctors should just ignore her? Wouldn't you say that the law ought to impel medical providers to provide that urgent medical care? We have plenty of those laws on the books right now. Why is it just the case that when it comes to the most vulnerable, little babies, that for them, we, in the words of Ralph Northam, we just kind of put them on a table, maybe make them a little comfortable and have a conversation between the doctor and the mother to see if you want to kill them?
Just a quick one, guys. Don't forget to smash the like button on this video. It does help me out a lot. And if you have not already subscribed to the channel, and if you get value from what we do here, then don't hesitate to do that. Back to it.
Yeah, I don't want babies to die either, but I think it becomes very difficult to talk about when there's an entire movement that thinks that having an IUD is killing a baby. So at that
So
point,
you
you're like,
keep
well,
trying
we
to
can't-
change the subject from the real political issue to a contrived political issue, because you know that the real political issue, as it's being fought, the Democrat position is completely indefensible and abhorrent to anyone who has even a modicum of a conscience. So you try to move to a contrived
But so why not?
political issue
So why not
that
argue
nobody is
around there?
debating
Like
right
why
now.
not? Why not argue around the final trimester and supporting if a fetus is viable? Like then.
Well, hold on.
give-
There's a big
yeah,
difference
like-
between the final trimester and an IUD or something, right? There's a lot of space in the middle. And right now, the issue is that abortion is effectively legal at any point, including in some places after birth, which is just called murder. I think what the Democrats are trying to do is really blur this issue, and I'm all for having bioethical debates over the origin of life and all the right. I find that all very interesting. But we're in an election season, and what I'm observing is the actual political issue, the actual political the policies that are being advanced by the Democrats right now, all concern those latter stages, the much clearer point of this, up until the moment of birth, shout your abortion, changing the penal code, for goodness sakes, in New York. Why is it that the Democrats, why is it that you, Ryan, when we're debating this right now, you are desperately trying to avoid that part of it? Because you know that that's a losing issue for people.
Well, I'll tell you the reason. My view on this is I don't even want to have a view on this. Like,
Exactly.
I don't want to have anything to do with it. Like, I want this
Slavery
decision
doesn't
to be left
concern me.
between women
That's an
and,
issue
and
for
their
the southern
doctor.
states. Forget about that. It's
Not the
can't I
southern
just live
states.
my
It's
life?
for women and their doctors. Just work this. Like, I trust them to make the decision that is best for them. And there's so much to think about in this world that. Like
There's
why
so
do I
much
need
to think about.
I'm
So
curious.
why
I'm curious
why
where
do I have
I'm
to
curious
talk about infanticide or the law
So why-
or elections or politics? I don't know, bro.
Where
Because
on
you're
your
a
list is
citizen
this?
in a self-governing republic, and this is a deeply
yeah, okay.
important moral issue.
There's a lot of deeply important moral issues. Why do you care so much about this? I'm just curious. I don't even necessarily want to debate the question because
Sure,
I'm not sure
I'll
there's
tell you
even
what.
that much point. But what?
I'm happy to tell you why.
Yeah.
Because the right to life is not just one right among many. It's not like the privilege to drive a car or the right to smoke a cigarette at the age of 21. The right to life is the fundamental right on which all of the other rights rely. It cuts down to the very core of our being. So this is why we have very serious laws against murder. It's why we take murder laws and murder trials more seriously than laws about jaywalking or tickets about parking. So this is obviously a really important issue. Cuts to the heart of who we are, how we think about all of morality and all of the law and all of the human person. And the people who we're talking about here are the most vulnerable people among us who don't have a voice, who are innocent little babies. So to me, that seems kind of important. I know there are a lot of big issues in the world, but I think I would put jaywalking or even tax rates at a less significant part of this debate than say the right to life.
Yeah, I mean, when again pursuing that question, like when in your life did women's pregnancies become like something that you were like, this is the thing I really am going to make my.
Well, it's not women's pregnancies became important to me when my wife was pregnant for the first time because I had to, go get her like snacks and things at night. But life, the question of human life, morality has been a question for a long time. I mean, if you're interested in politics and you're not interested in practical morality, well, I don't really know what you're doing, because the law, by definition, is a codification of practical moral views. And I, by the way,
But I mean, I guess for you, is this like an always thing? Like, is this an always thing? Like the first time in like middle school you learned about it, you're like, I need to fight for these.
I mean, he's Catholic, right, Michael?
No. I'm Catholic, but I was an apostate for a long time. So I was, from the age of 13 to 23, I was pretty irreligious. And so I was in favor of legal abortion. I had no problem with it. I didn't understand why pro-lifers believed in it. And I was having a lunch one day during a summer fellowship with a bioethicist. And she was asking me my views on things. And I said, I'm a Republican. I like low taxes, but I don't care about abortion. I think it's fine. And then we had a long conversation about it. And she persuaded me that I was wrong. So I know in our modern day, it's unusual for people to be persuaded by arguments, but she persuaded me that there's really no argument for abortion, and that the argument in favor of life and defending the preborn is pretty much rock solid.
You were 23?
No, I was 21 during that lunch. I was 23 when I reverted to the church.
And so you're 21 and you got argued into being anti-abortion
by a very intelligent bioethicist. Yeah.
Well,
holy smokes. I mean, I really hope that they have Smooth Mickey on the program again, but I don't know if they will, because there's bound to be some trauma there from this man getting absolutely taken to school on basic ethics by our boy Smooth Mickey. But let's go through it, because for the host of a political talk show, that is one of the worst performances I've ever seen. And honestly, it doesn't get any better from here on in. And arguably, it only gets worse. And I don't know these guys. I don't watch their show. Maybe they're better than this, but this is not good. So that segment that we just watched started off very funny, because Knowles brings up the atrocities being signed into law by the Democrats, such as Cuomo and Tim Walz, allowing for these post-birth abortions, at which point he kicks it back to the hosts, and the guy wants absolutely none of the smoke. And he tries to handball to his host, to which point she doesn't want the smoke either. She gives the ball right back to him, and then he's in deep water.
Democrats have brought the issue. It's not Republicans who have done that.
Well, Ryan, I saw your reaction to the after birth.
So now he is stuck in a very difficult place, because he has to probably try and defend this from the Democrat point of view. But if he says it's wrong, then he has to give a justification as to why it's wrong. And then he is in deep, deep water. Because now, instead of just saying smug little remarks, you have to lay out a coherent, ethical justification for your worldview. And this guy is just not equipped to have that debate with Michael. So, like so many others, he chooses what he thinks is the easy way out by just saying, well, I'm not a doctor. We should just leave it up to the doctors and up to the woman. It's their choice.
Why don't we leave this to doctors? Who am I to,
Because we're citizens of a self-governing
school.
republic and we have laws against murder.
Well, actually, it's not the easy way out, because even with that remark, you are then caught in a very basic logical trap that is impossible to get out of. Because if your standard for your ethical judgments is, well, let's just leave it to the professionals, then like Michael said, once upon a time in history, slavery was legal and slavery was accepted. So what would you have done? Just left it to the professionals? Or an even better example, during the Soviet Union, when they were conducting experiments on human beings, would you just leave it to the medical professionals, or would you maybe have an ethical disagreement with them? And lastly, Michael made a very, very crucial point there when asked, well, why do you care so much about women's pregnancies? Which is, by the way, a very disingenuous framing of the question. To which end, though, Smooth Mickey responds by saying, if you're interested in politics and you're not interested in practical morality or applied morality, then what the hell are you doing? Exactly right. I mean, people will always yell about religious people imposing their views on politics. But every single question in politics ultimately boils down to a question of morality and ethics. So if you do want to be involved in the discussion, and if you want to even be a mover and a shaker, then you better have a pretty solid epistemology, and you'd better be able to back that up. And now on to the last bit, where we get some more extremely weak arguments, to which Smooth Mickey is able to just pick them apart with a smile.
But she's really lost support among labor. So, this is a critique that's come up through Trump, but also beyond that. And what is it? Well, it's that markets are great, and we support economic prosperity, but you can't put the cart before the horse. You have to recognize, to the point we were discussing earlier with Ryan, that there are moral considerations here. And if you untether the market from any moral considerations, you're going to be sunk, and everybody's going to be miserable. And maybe your GDP ticks up, but it's not even reflecting economic health, because you can game the system very easily. I mean, if drug dealers are trading fentanyl or people are going to brothels, I guess that could be reflected in a higher GDP, but it doesn't mean your country is really healthier. So to the point, I think Ryan made a really good point earlier that we have to take into consideration, which is when our friend here waved the white flag on talking about later term abortion, he said, look, I just don't want to think about it. Why do I have to think about these moral questions? And the answer is, well, because you're a citizen, and we're supposed to have a self-government here. And when John Adams says, the Constitution's built for moral and religious people, that's not just some nice platitude that you hear at evangelical camps and brunches. That he's really warning you of something. John Adams was not the most orthodox Christian in the world by any stretch. He was making an empirical observation that our constitutional system and things like markets and things like free enterprise do not work if people are not constrained by morality. What could happen then is you could have something that is used for a great good, like markets, be used for terrible evil, for the exploitation of workers, which, if you're a Christian, that's one of the 4 sins that cries out to God for vengeance. You know, I mean, that's a really awful and evil thing to do. People who are putting mere profits over the common good and the health of their country. That's something that the conservatives have to watch out for too. But I think really the rise of the Trump movement and populism and the MAGA movement, whatever you want to call it, over the old stale Chamber of Commerce kind of republicanism, I think it's responding to that need. And I think it's why you're seeing labor come over. I think it's why you're seeing a Kennedy, for goodness sakes, come over. I think it's why you're seeing people like Tulsi Gabbard come over. The Republicans, bizarrely, you wouldn't have predicted it 20 years ago, have become the party that are responding to the real moral crisis brought about by markets and labor.
I mean, it's just funny that Donald Trump is the guy leading that party to its, so it's moral victory. So I mean, I think
I don't know why it's funny. I really, I get it.
The guy has probably promised to pay for. I don't think he's paid for any abortions because he doesn't pay his contractors or subcontractors. Why would he actually go through on paying for an abortion? But you don't think he's like suggested to somebody that he would pay for their abortion? I mean, look at the guy. Like the guy's life is a caricature of immorality. Like it's fine. Like he can do whatever he wants. I don't care.
I don't know. I don't really speculate.
Like the idea that like this is the guy that would be a role model for this moral rectitude is kind of comical.
Ryan, if you were religious, you wouldn't find it comical. You might find it delightful, but you wouldn't find it comical because God uses all sorts of imperfect people for his ends. If you're Christian, you certainly believe that. And so the left, ironically, I was speaking with a very close left-wing friend of mine who said she really hated Trump, and she just is a good person, unlike Trump. And what's funny is that was Trump's answer. He says, I try to be a good person. I try not to commit sins. But of course, all sin and fall short of the glory of God. So you're speculating without any basis on all sorts of private sins that Trump, in principle, could have committed, even though, again, there's no evidence for it.
Unfortunately, we don't have to do as much speculation as
I mean, he's
wish we did.
Definitely an open adulterer. That much is.
He's lived a very flamboyant life, and he's done all sorts of terrible things, and he's been totally open about a lot of those things. But I suppose the point here, from my perspective as a Christian, is, yeah, right. That is how God works. God uses flawed vessels, and believe it or not, Donald Trump, because he's had the spotlight on him for a long time, it's very easy to say he did that terrible thing, and he did that awful thing, and he did that evil thing. But believe it or not, Ryan, you've done very evil things too. And if you think that God can use you to do good things, if God can use me to do good things, it shouldn't be surprising that God can use Trump. But what Christians say on Easter Sunday is they say, "Oh, happy fault that won for us so great, so glorious a Redeemer." They actually celebrate the fall of man, the original sin, because it can not that it's a good thing in itself, but it actually brought about this great glory and redemption. So I don't know. I think Americans like a comeback story. I think Americans like redemption, and they like grace. And I think the gracelessness of the left, the total lack of charity of the left, has repelled a lot of people.
A redemption story, though, requires somebody to be seeking redemption. Is there any evidence that you've seen?
There's a lot of evidence that Trump
is seeking redemption?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's recanted a lot of his previous views and behaviors, and I think he's owned up to being kind of a rough guy. I remember one time he was asked if he had a beer, and he said, "No, I'm the only president that's never had a beer. It's the only good thing you can say about me. Can you imagine if I had a beer? If I were a drinker, I'd be the worst." That's called humility, and I think Donald Trump, ironically enough, exhibits a lot more humility than most people in our political class, certainly than the sanctimonious left, which ironically is totally bereft of sanctity.
Pretty sure you just said that Trump betrays a lot of humility.
I think Trump demonstrates humility, ironically, yeah.
I mean,
a lot more than the left, yeah.
I think there is something that people miss with why Trump appeals to like normal Americans, because he is like self-deprecating.
It's his humility.
Sometimes
it's his humility. He does make fun of himself.
Yeah. He does make fun of himself. Yeah, like he let Fallon ruffle his hair, something like that.
Wowee. So just another absolute dog walk there. So the argument that this guy's made is a very, very common logical fallacy called an argument from hypocrisy. And it's the lowest form of argumentation. However, this is even lower than that, if possible, because this is an argument from speculated hypocrisy. He's speculating that Trump did something hypocritical, and then saying, well, he's not fit to make decisions in politics because of this thing that I thought he did, which I have absolutely no proof for. This is just really bad argumentation, and the easiest way to break it down would just be to say, if a murderer tells you that murdering people is wrong, is he right about that? And the answer is obviously yes, he's still right about that, even though he himself is a murderer. It's still wrong to murder people. And so if you're holding a politician to this standard, this argument from hypocrisy standard, then every single politician has to be completely perfect. They cannot have a single blemish, or else they are in no position to tell anybody else what to do. And they are in no position to be a part of the lawmaking process. See how quickly it falls apart? But Michael Knowles answered that absolutely perfectly, saying that Ryan, the host, has also done terrible things, which we all have, guys. So very much an impressive performance by our boy Smooth Mickey there. Don't forget to like this video, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And if you would like to watch another video right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV, keeping you armed and dangerous.